We are coming to you from St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and we are thrilled to be here today. Uh, Studying with ADHD presents its own unique set of challenges, and we are going to chat a little bit today across our team with some of our favorite tips and strategies and suggestions for how to stay organized, avoid procrastination or reduce the impact a little bit, stay motivated, and work on our mental health when things get a little bit tough. This session might be, you might have come to this session because you have a diagnosis of ADHD. You may be in the process of getting a diagnosis. You may have a suspicion that you have ADHD, or you may just be ADHD curious. This session is for everyone, and we hope that everyone can learn something and take something away that maybe they can apply in their everyday practice. Before we go too much further in, though, I'd like to provide a land acknowledgement from where we are coming to you from. We're coming from, and I'm going to ask Belle to advance the slides for us. We're coming to you from St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And we'll do our land acknowledgement from where we're coming to you from, but we'd love for you to each think about the lands that you live and learn and recreate and work on wherever you happen to be joining us from today. St. Mary's University acknowledges that our university is located on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. These treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized the Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. And every time we gather, we like to think about reconciliation and the actions and steps that we are taking towards that. Let's talk about what we're going to look at today in the time that we have together. Bill, if you can advance the slides for me. Today we're going to talk about ADHD and procrastination and the connection, how those two things exist together and how they relate. We're going to talk a little bit about the mental health implications and common learning challenges that students with ADHD face, and hopefully share with you some of our tips and strategies, and maybe even get to hear from you a little bit about things that work for you and things that might be helpful. And we're going to wrap things up with a bit of a plan for success and a plan for moving forward. If that sounds good to you, I'd love to see a thumbs up from you on your reaction buttons. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill, who I realize I forgot to introduce. Bill, why don't you go ahead and
Happy
introduce
to introduce myself. My name is Bill Travis. I work as an accessibility advisor at the Fred Smithers Center for Student Accessibility at St. Mary's University. I've been here only a few years, but I've been working in the field of accessibility and post-secondary for over 20 years now. And I've worked with more than 2,000 students with ADHD. I'll also share that I have ADHD, but a lot of my experience comes from other students and what's worked for them. As you can see on my first slide, I'm going to focus on the blame game. I'm going to talk about how procrastination isn't your fault if you procrastinate. So first, I want a show of hands or some reaction buttons with a thumbs up, perhaps. Who here procrastinates? Do you consider yourself a procrastinator? Just raise your hand, or, oh yeah, there we go. There's a few. Awesome that I'm speaking to the right group. Do you know why most folks with ADHD procrastinate? A lot of folks with ADHD procrastinate. Is it something that you understand? Because that's pretty important to stop playing the blame game. It's a completely natural tendency, okay? Given that we're programmed from childhood to not waste time. In our society, we're told since we're kids, like, to be efficient or to not waste time. It's considered like one of the deadly sins to waste time. And through experience, we've become at least subconsciously aware that we can get a lot more out of our time, a lot more done per hour when we're down to the wire. Like the night before an assignment is due, I can get 4 times as much done per hour than if I try to start it a week before or 2 weeks before. Does that ring true to you guys? I mean, let's see some thumbs up on that, or at least one of you. Okay. That's because the sense of urgency causes our body to release adrenaline. And adrenaline has a very similar effect on the brain of someone with ADHD as the medication that's prescribed. It's the body's stimulant medication. It's a natural response. Now, for folks without ADHD, when faced with an emergency, they've got the fight, flight, or freeze response. I'm sure you've heard of those before. But people with ADD, we've got another F, and it's focus, right? We can focus in that moment. Did you know that like 5% of the population, and actually in the States, the CDC says 11% of children in school have ADHD. But even if you don't have a diagnosis, maybe you're one of those 1 in 10 or 1 in 20, right? Interestingly, I heard a statistic a few years back from the registrar at Atlantic College here in Eastern Canada that 50% of the applicants that year to their paramedic program self-identified as having ADHD. So like 5 or 10 times the statistical average in the population. It's very interesting. And I thought about that, like, why do people with ADHD get drawn towards professions where there's a sense of urgency? It's because of that. They can think better in those moments than they can when they don't have that pressure. And it's really, really interesting. And I'd be curious to do a research study on, cross program, cross country, and just to see what other kind of programs attract more people with ADHD. The key, though, the thing to understand is it's a natural tendency. So if you do procrastinate and you have ADHD, it's not your fault. It's not because you're lazy. There's a different reason there. We need to stop playing the blame game. Self-blame and anger turn inwards. That's what leads to depression. Depression is such a common comorbidity with undiagnosed and untreated ADHD. Self-blame and anger turn inwards causes depression. Okay, it's anger turned inward. I believe that was William Styron who described depression as anger turned inward. Right, blaming yourself for something that isn't your fault isn't being fair with yourself. All right, procrastination is not your fault, so don't blame yourself for it. So before I move on, I want to share something with you. It's a song that I wrote, and it's it's a mantra that I have when I hear myself talking negatively to myself. I'm going to start. Any mental health exercise, it's a self-help song. Any mental health exercise is good to start with a grounding exercise. So we'll talk about things I can hear and things I can feel. Softly falling rain, sand between my toes. Here come these thoughts again. Soon I'll be in the throes, calling old and distant friends, pouring feelings on the page. This dark night one day will end. I look back on it, it's no more than a phase. Feeling sorry for myself won't push me any further along. I can start by stopping, listening to my inner voice when things I tell myself are wrong. If I wouldn't say it to a friend, then why describe myself that way? Don't let it slip your mind. To thyself be kind. You will heal someday. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, then why describe yourself that way? Don't let it slip your mind. To thyself be kind. You will heal someday. No, don't let it slip your mind. To thyself be kind, and you will heal someday. You gotta be kind to yourself, you know? You gotta be your own best friend, not your worst judge. Being angry at yourself is not a good motivational strategy, I've learned. Um, so we need to find a way to avoid self-blame, don't we? Like, I know I can do better on assignments if I find a way to start early. Different strategies work for different people when it comes to avoiding procrastination, but to make it easier to start the kind of assignment that I procrastinate on, I break it into steps. I set mini deadlines to complete those steps. Like, setting of a personal deadline might not be enough. Like, it's not enough for me. It doesn't mean anything. I'm not going to lose any points if I don't meet that deadline. So some folks will gamify the process using apps like, I don't know, Habitica or something like that. Others, like me, we need to hire a tutor or make an appointment with the learning strategist in the Learning Commons or in the Learning Center or someone in the Writing Center, maybe, to make myself accountable to another human being. The best way to change that negative self-talk that can lead to depression in a lot of people, I mean, due to blaming themselves for a natural tendency that isn't really their fault, is to replace that negative self-talk, like, Bill, you lazy bum, with something more positive, like, oh, look at this. 2 weeks ahead of schedule and I've already got my outline done. You've got this, Bill. Like, such as congratulations for meeting a personal deadline. So sometimes mental health support, though, it's needed to undo some of the damage caused by self-blame. Like, I was diagnosed late in life with my ADD, so I developed some negative coping strategies, like getting angry with myself. But that doesn't solve the problem. I mean, if I still go ahead and I make those mistakes and I'm always procrastinating, I'm still going to have damage, create new damage. So I need to find a way to avoid it going forward and break this pattern, by developing strategies that work for me. And so I would suggest the same for you. If you do procrastinate, find a way to avoid it. Like, how many times have you woken up 3 days after a deadline just because I'm more efficient writing a paper the night before? I can get more done per hour. So I'm programmed to do that. In society, to be efficient. So I'm going to wait and I'm going to do it the night before. It's a natural tendency. But then I wake up 3 days later with ideas I've been sleeping on, and they bubble to the surface and I say, oh, there's another great example I could use in my paper. But the paper's already handed in, right? So it's kind of useless. So if I can start earlier, I know I can do better. I know I can have a better argument. It's had time to gel. So those two components there, the mental health support and the mental health side of things, is what our counseling specialist, our mental health specialist, Emma Dubois from our counseling center. She's going to talk about in the next few slides. And then after that, Amy McAvoy, manager of our Student Success Center, is going to talk about some practical strategies to find ways to avoid procrastination going forward, breaking this pattern in different ways that work for different people. I hope you enjoy the rest of this chat. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Bill. Hi, everyone. My name is Emma Dubois. My pronouns are she, her. I work in the Counseling Center at St. Mary's as a mental health educator, and I've been here for about 4 years now. Prior to that, I worked in university residences for about 8 years. And a lot of my experience and what I talk about with mental health comes from working in university residences. For anyone who's ever worked in residences, maybe as a residence assistant or something like that, you know that you get a lot of different experiences there, and very valuable experiences there. Like Bill, I am also an ADHDer, and I was also somebody who was diagnosed after university. I'm going to talk a little bit about the mental health implications of having ADHD and going through school, going through work, going through that part of your life, and what it could mean for your mental health. That being said, it might not. Whatever I say here might relate to you, or it might be something that you don't see as much for yourself. And that's totally fine. That's totally valid. This is really just something else to consider when you're thinking about ADHD and procrastination. So we're going to start with the cognitive triangle here. And this is a component of cognitive behavioral therapy. So what the triangle represents is our thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. And the idea is that all of these thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all interconnected, and they all influence one another. So for example, if someone has a day scheduled where they're not going to see anybody else, maybe they're just doing things for themselves that day, maybe they're, taking care of themselves at home, and they have that day to just spend with themselves. Maybe at some point they start having thoughts of, I feel really disconnected right now. I'm feeling a little bit isolated. And that's totally inadvertent. Maybe you were trying to, just spend time with yourself and be with yourself. But those thoughts can impact your feelings and behaviors afterward. So if you start to feel disconnected and you're thinking, I don't know if anyone wants to hang out with me anymore. Why do I spend so much time alone? If you start to think those things, maybe you start to have some physical or emotional feelings that come with that. Maybe you start to have a little bit of anxiety or low mood. And maybe you continue not seeing other people because you think to yourself, nobody wants to hang out with me. And so that's one way that the cognitive triangle could work, that our thoughts, behaviors, and feelings all influence one another. We're going to talk a little bit about depression over the next couple of slides. So if we were thinking about this from a depression perspective, people with depression oftentimes have more frequent negative thoughts about themselves, that sort of thing. And so no matter how their day is going, sometimes those thoughts are just going to pop up. And those thoughts will have an impact on feelings and behaviors. So even if somebody was getting ready to go out for the day, just one negative thought that pops up might change their behaviors. It might change how they are able to interact and engage that day. And so all of these things interact with one another. And I think that if we look at this, we can also see how it's a really good chain reaction here. Something happens with our thoughts, our behaviors, or our feelings, some sort of situation arises, and one thing can affect the other. And so we can see it as kind of creating a downward spiral with the examples that I gave you. But we can also look at it the other way. So we could be thinking about it as a positive spiral. And the idea, I guess, would be that we can make small changes. So if we do feel ourselves starting to get upset about, we've been procrastinating for a really long time, we're upset with ourselves. So the behavior here might be that we did not study, that we did procrastinate, and that we do have something coming up that we are not prepared for. What are the feelings and thoughts that come up? And so what we're going to talk about are some strategies to deal with the mental health side of things. And then when we think about behaviors, we can also think about different learning strategies. And that's something that Amy will cover with her slides too. And so when we think about ADHD and depression, some of you may know there is a high comorbidity between the two of them. There's a high comorbidity for ADHD with several other neurodevelopmental disorders and with different mental illnesses. And so that's also something that makes it difficult when we do start to try to get that diagnosis of figuring out what it is, because oftentimes those other symptoms might occur first, those symptoms might be more present, and the ADHD gets missed. So it does create complications sometimes. When people are experiencing depression, some different symptoms that they might have, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, might be feeling sad, irritable, empty, losing interest or pleasure in activities that you once enjoyed. So similar to the triangle, one of those pieces was your feelings. And unfortunately, with depression, you might start to feel less pleasure in activities that you once really enjoyed. Decreased energy, and so that could impact your behaviors and what you're able to engage with. Feeling worthless or excessively guilty, or difficulty thinking, concentrating, having forgetfulness, all of those sorts of things that come up with procrastination as well. And so when we think about how depression comes up within ADHD, there are lots of different things. So we talked a little bit already about not having a diagnosis or getting a later in life diagnosis and not quite knowing what's happening. There are also societal and familial stigma around ADHD. So what kind of family did you grow up with? Who was around you? ADHD does typically involve some emotion regulation challenges for people. Some people might not have those. Some people might experience that pretty intensely. And that can absolutely lead to depression after you feel yourself losing control a little bit. Maybe you start to feel some guilt and embarrassment over that. Rejection sensitive dysphoria is something that comes up in ADHD conversations a lot. And just being overly sensitive to different things that are happening around you, and maybe other people around you not knowing that, or not knowing maybe how to communicate with you and interact in a way that helps you regulate yourself. Having a lack of supports and accommodations can also absolutely lead to depression with ADHD. When you're expected to be doing the same thing as everybody else, but you are not given the supports that everybody else already has, absolutely that can lead to mental health concerns. We talked about negative self-talk and self-blame as well. And that also loops back to the cognitive triangle. And then challenges with starting and completing tasks. So this gets into executive function challenges. If you have a project to start and you don't know how to start it, absolutely that can lead to having negative self-talk, that can lead to depression and other sorts of things. So all of those things, it makes sense how they're all connected. And the idea here is not to make us feel bad or guilty about all of these things, but more so to make sure that we're aware. The more that we're aware of some of these things and how they can happen, the more we can talk with ourselves about it and make sure we're aware of that, and set ourselves up for success. You can switch to the next slide. So what to do when the strategies don't work? Most of what Amy is going to talk about is strategies to help you succeed. And that's a lot of what we do within student services, is helping people succeed. However, all of you are human. We're not robots. Mistakes are an inevitable part of humanity. I think that a lot of the time when we make mistakes, we're very quick to jump to, this is my ADHD, I hate my ADHD, that sort of thing. I think that we do need to remember too that mistakes are humanity, and we are allowed to be human, and we're also allowed to have ADHD. And so it's important that we accept some of those things too. But what we're kind of coming around to is that with that cognitive triangle, if we have a situation that comes in, let's say that we procrastinated And we didn't end up getting a submission in on time. We didn't end up submitting a paper on time. We got some points docked. We're feeling upset. How do we avoid a downward spiral when we procrastinate or when we make mistakes? It's going to happen at some point. And there's the logistical concerns of like setting yourself up for what do I do in these situations? How do I talk to my professor? That sort of thing. But we also need to be thinking about our own mental health, that might have a downward spiral. So we did submit something late. That was the behavior. And then we've already got it primed in our head to start talking about ourselves, about how lazy we feel, about how we feel unmotivated, about how we can just never get anything done, that sort of thing. And so, how do we jump in and kind of disrupt that chain? Because it is very easy for that to start spiraling downward. So, when we think about our thoughts, we talked a little bit about how you could be thinking about why are those thoughts coming up, questioning where did those thoughts come from? Are those thoughts from your head or are those thoughts from other people? Um, and then, like Bill showed with the song, I think that you can also kind of drown out those thoughts sometimes if you need to by thinking positive thoughts, which is way easier said than done, of course. But having some of those kind of mantras in mind, having some of those positive thoughts that we can rely on easily will help us to avoid going into that downward spiral. And so for me, one of those thoughts would be, I am enough, I have enough, I am doing enough. And that's something that I repeat to myself if I have made a mistake with something. We might also think about how those situations can impact our feelings. So for me, I know that if I hand something in late, if I've procrastinated something, especially something that I'm working with other people on, I feel so much guilt and shame. And that's just going to cause more thoughts of self hatred, more behaviors that are just not helpful. And so, what can we do? What are some positive activities, positive things we can do to change our feelings? Um, and so these aren't necessarily strategies to kind of help you stop procrastinating, but I think that when we have these conversations, we also need to be thinking about what happens if the strategies don't work. And so just reminding ourselves that there are strategies that will work and we have to try. Amy's going to give you 8 different types of strategies that you can use to work on that. And I'm sure some of them will work for you and others might not. And so the idea is just how can you prepare and make sure that you feel settled if something does happen. Next slide, please. Last thing that I want to talk about, and this is very similar to the last slide, is acceptance. So I'll give you a second to look at the graphic on the left here. What is acceptance? So on the left-hand side, it says it's raining. I don't like rain. I wish it wasn't raining. My day would be better if it wasn't raining. My day is ruined. Every day is like this. It's always like this. Why does it always rain when all I want is for it to be sunny? And then on the other side, it says it's raining. Yep. And there are things that we can change and there are things that we cannot change. And that's a lot of what the idea of radical acceptance gets at. Radical acceptance is a component of dialectical behavioral therapy. And the idea is that we're fully acknowledging and embracing whatever is happening at that moment. So if it's that you procrastinated studying, I acknowledge that. It happened. I was here for it. But we can't try to change it or place blame in that moment. We just have to accept that this is where we're at, and this is where we're working from without any judgment. So the example here is, I forgot about this assignment and it's due in 2 days. The idea with dialectical behavioral therapy comes down to dialectics, and that is 2 opposing thoughts or ideas can be true at the same time. So an example of that is, I'm not doing well in this class, and there are ways that I can get back on track. Both of those things can be true. Just because we are at a certain point, just because we procrastinated and we've got 1 day left until a major assignment is due, doesn't mean that there's nothing that we can do to get ourselves back on track in that moment. All right. So we talked a little bit about the cognitive triangle. We talked about depression and ADHD, and about what to do when things sometimes go wrong, if they do go wrong. Um, I'm going to hand things over to Amy now for some learning strategies.
Thanks so much, Emma. My name's Amy McAvoy. I'm the manager of the Student Success Center here at St. Mary's University. I work with students every day who are trying to enjoy university a little bit more and get a little bit more out of their learning. And it's very rewarding work that I get to do. These are some of the conversations and some of the lessons learned, I guess, that I've acquired over a career working with students. Um, this is not an exhaustive list by any means. And in fact, while I'm going to talk about sort of 8 different potential strategies or tips, if you can walk away with 1 or 2, then that's probably a good place to start. We can't do it all at once. Um, focus on one thing at a time and see if that can become part of your daily practice. So for with students who are learning with ADHD, some common challenges include building and using a schedule, avoiding and overcoming procrastination, which is of course the bulk and focus of this presentation today, focusing while studying or writing, or just taking in and processing information, whether that's in class or part of reading. So just reflecting on those 4 things, do any of these things kind of resonate with you as areas that you might struggle with as a learner? You can use the chat and maybe just put in the number, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. So building, using a schedule. I might even include adhering to deadlines under number 1. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. 2 and 4. So procrastination and focusing. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, that's great to appreciate that sharing and using of the chat for interaction engagement. Bill, can you advance the slides for me? Thanks so much. Okay. We won't, not all of these strategies apply to all of those areas for development, but here are some of the things that I'm going to talk about over the next few minutes that we have together. So externalizing the things that you have to do is going to be the first strategy I'm going to talk about. Mapping out tasks, building in accountability, which Bill's already touched on, creating consequences, incentives, or dare I say rewards in the work that we're doing, planning specifics, practicing awareness and alignment of our own learning habits and our own preferences, managing distractions, which is becoming an increasing challenge, I find. There's so many distractions, and staying motivated, tapping into digging deep sometimes to be in touch with our motivation. Let's advance the slides. Okay, so first tactic or strategy suggestion that I would have is to externalize your tasks. Externalize all the commitments that you have to make. So Bill, you can just run through these so that we have the full list listed there, please. Yeah, so you can't control what you can't see. So how many times have you been sitting there and you're working on something and then another idea pops into your head and then another idea pops into your head and all of a sudden you're going in different directions at once. And so that's almost like an internal distraction, right? That's pulling you away from the focus of your work. We recommend if you can't, you can't control what you can't see. So taking the time to create some lists and to create a focal point. So using lists, using outlines, some people like mind maps, creating anchors for yourself so that you can remember these things and then gently return back to the work that you're doing. So prompts and other ways to sort of keep you on track. So externalize everything, all the things that you have to do. And so sometimes, like for me, what works for me is to put everything in one place, maybe two places. This is where my calendar and my to-do list kind of come together. I like to write out everything into a to-do list. And once you kind of get it out of your head, it sort of frees up your mind, right? And gives you some space to do the things that are right in front of you that you need to get going on. So working on whatever strategy works best for you. Some of us like to-do lists. Uh, or does everyone here use a to-do list, or what are some of the ways that you get it out of your head and onto paper, into your notes on your phone? What are some of the places you like to externalize what it is that you have to get done? So that's my question for the group right now. If you want to throw some strategies into the chat, we can all sort of see pen and paper. Yes, and Bill says, I like checking or crossing things off. And so that was like my last bullet there, is to always keep track of your progress and celebrate the check mark or the check box. Not only do I do lists, I make little check boxes so that I can go back and actually check things off as I go. And there's nothing that feels better than checking something off your to-do list. And that actually helps you to see where you're making incremental improvements, right? Or incremental progress towards your goal. And we don't get everything done in a day. We get a couple things done. And that success in checking things off and moving things off your desk, so to speak, helps to build that momentum. And that actually helps to contribute towards your motivation too, because then you can see your progress and what you're accomplishing. All right, so Catherine uses tasks in Google Calendar. That's awesome. Mind maps at work. Emma Dubois, yes, of course, I 100% agree. And sometimes does that include like doodling, a little bit of doodling happening? That's also a great way to just externalize what you've got rolling around in your mind, but then capturing it. And then, of course, it doesn't keep the energy in your brain either, because sometimes you've got something you know you have to do, it's rolling around in your brain, and you are dedicating quite a bit of energy to remembering it, right? Whereas if you can externalize it, put it on a to-do list, it clears up the space, the energy, you've got it in front of you and gives you, a place to focus. So, all right, let's move on to the next step. Mapping it out. So we've got our to-do list or our mind map. We've kind of done the big brain dump and externalized everything that we have to maybe get done this week, this month, this term. It's something that it's a process that we probably repeat several times over the term. Now we have to break down these bigger projects into smaller chunks. And so mapping it out or breaking it into chunks is a really important process. And where we take something like a bigger assignment, like, oh, I've got this, paper that's worth 25% of my mark. That's not one task. That's probably many, many tasks. And if we can break it down, then suddenly it becomes a little bit more achievable. And so taking an assignment, and again, this might depend on the scales and scope, the size of the assignment, how many steps you might break it down into. But take a look at it critically and see what are the things that are I'm going to need to do in order to accomplish this task. Um, and you can certainly go back to your rubric, the assignment itself, for clues as to where to start and what that could be. There might be some that are explicitly listed in the assignment, but then there's maybe some that are more implicit, that are not, specifically said, but as a student, you'll likely have to do. Like, I'm going to have to go to the library. I might want to meet with the research librarian. What are some of the steps that I want to make for myself in order to achieve this assignment or this bigger task? An extension of that is then to also kind of give yourself a bit of a guesstimate as to how long each of these steps might take. Um, this is going to help you when you're now going to put into your schedule and sort of being realistic. And this is always like an estimation. Some assignments, write themselves. not as many as I'd like. Most of them take a little bit of work, and you know, it comes with practice, but it also comes with the topic too. Some topics are easier for us to master than others, and so we're always kind of guesstimating how long these things will take. But it's a good practice to get into, and then putting each of those tasks then into your schedule is kind of a next natural step, because what gets scheduled gets done. Okay, so strategies for building on our next strategy is accountability. Bill has mentioned this already. So many of our students with ADHD really appreciate accountability check-ins. So having someone that you're accountable to. In high school, we might have seen our same teachers every single day. At university, we don't see we might only see our professors a couple times a week. Um, we might only see our tutors once a week, but booking in with another person, and it could be formal, so it could be something like booking. I'm working on a paper, and I'm going to go meet with one of the coaches or the tutors at the writing center, and I'm going to book an appointment for that. Or it could be something less formal, like with a group of students that you work with. So someone in your class that you want to have a study session with, and you book like just even a video chat where you're both working on like a similar project, or you're working on the same course at the same time. So you're working virtually together. Now you're accountable to that person to show up and to be working on economics at that same time. And so you're dedicating time, and that body doubling and working with someone is also going to help keep you on track. So scheduling an accountability check-in, or someone that you're accountable to, is also something that's really helpful for all students, but especially students who struggle with ADHD. Create consequences or incentives. So this is where Bill was talking about gamifying. And so there's a lot of apps out there if you're techno savvy. I feel like I'm learning about new apps all the time that help us with our productivity, help us stay on track, and stay organized with the assignments and such that we have. And but a good number of these also help to record as you're achieving things, and they give us some positive feedback as well. So I've listed a couple there that students have told me about. I haven't actually used Habitica myself, or Finch, but I'm learning about new ones all the time. And if that's something that is of interest to you, I'd encourage you to take a look. A less tech heavy or incentive might be, when I get done writing this lab report, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to spend 20 minutes on my phone. I'm going to put my phone away in the meantime, but I'm going to reward myself with sort of 20 minutes of getting caught up with my social network and that sort of thing, or watching one episode on Netflix. Just be careful that you don't hit that continue button, or let it continue to the next episode. Okay, let's see what else is next. So plan for specifics. One of the things and actually these 2 points are connected. So specifically plan for when you're going to do certain things. So if you have to do your bibliography for a paper that you're working on, if it's going to take you more than about 15 minutes to do, then I would book it into your schedule. So Friday at 3, I'm going to work on my bibliography. If it's so plan specific goals for each of your work sessions that you're doing. And I would also try to keep it to just 1 to 3 goals per work session that you're sitting down, or study session. And then that keeps it attainable and achievable. Practice awareness and alignment. So I think it's important that you're aware of your own study habits and notice what's working well for you, and where you see challenges coming up for yourself in your study sessions. So for example, I get a lot of my best work done after 10 o'clock at night. Between 10 and 1 seems to be my sweet spot whenever I have to do writing. I don't know exactly why, but I have learned this about myself that if I have some deep writing or creative writing that I need to do, that seems to be a time when I can really focus on that kind of work. So I plan accordingly, and I will set a writing task aside for that time of day. So notice those things about yourself. And when you learn best and when you are most effective on different kinds of work. Sometimes, when you're tired, it's good to have some busy work. So, for example, I'm thinking about like a bibliography where it's finicky, but it's not a lot of brain power. So I'll set that aside for a time when I know that I'm going to be tired. I might not have the best energy, but it's an essential task that I have to get done. So I set aside that kind of work for those times a day. So being aware of your habits, your preferences, and when you're most productive in different ways. Okay, I think that one other thing I wanted to say, oh, can you go back just one more? I had one more thought there that I just wanted to mention. For our students with ADHD, practice slowing your response because sometimes we read an assignment and we jump really quick to what we think needs to be delivered. It's important to take the time and reread the assignment maybe 2, 3 times just to be sure that we have a better understanding of what is being asked of us. When you have ADHD, it's not hard to get off track and to be distracted by other things. When that happens, that will happen, gently bring yourself back and bring yourself back to that point of focus. What's on your to-do list for today, and just keep swimming. Because sometimes it's hard to get started. Sometimes it's hard when we get stuck. My message to you is just keep swimming, just keep moving towards your goal. All right, let's move to the next slide. Managing your distractions. Here's where I'd love to hear from you. So there's a couple of ways. There's so many different distractions available to us these days. And it's really interesting working with different students to hear about different tactics that they have and different strategies that they have, and some who don't have any strategies at all. And we talk about that as well. So there are different apps and browser blockers that can help you limit if there are some digital distractions for you. Um, and that pull you away from the work that you need to be doing. You can play with your notifications on things like on our campus, we use Brightspace. I know that there are some campuses out there that use Moodle and other learning platforms, but you can reduce the number of alerts that you're getting across all your different platforms. That might be useful. Setting sort of like work hours so that you're not distracted during those times, setting notifications to silent, those sorts of things are helpful. Other kinds of distractions, when things pop up and they do kind of take you out of the moment, you can just have a notepad or whatever your favorite platform is, where you note whatever that idea is, whatever that, call to action is, something that you have to do later on, and you sort of park it, and then gently return your focus back to the task at hand. So my question for you is, what works for you for managing distractions? Okay. Well, if you have any suggestions for how you manage distractions as they come up in your life, I'd be curious to know. You can enter those into the chat. Um, Motivation can also be a struggle at times for all of us. And when motivation rears its head for you and it poses a challenge, we really recommend reconnecting with your why and going back to that central purpose that you may have for taking that course, for taking the program that you're in, and trying to connect that to the task that you have in front of you. I know I want to become an engineer. I know I have to get through calculus to get there. Reconnecting to that, the reason you're here, and being grounded in that, is, big picture, how to connect back to that motivation. The other piece is to focus on the process. And we often think about the outcome, and, I want to get an A on this paper, but how am I going to get there? And it's a journey of 1,000 steps, right? So taking that first step and second step and third step and recognizing the steps we've already taken and how far we've come. Students I'm talking to today, my first year students, I'm like, you are not the same student you were in September. And you've come a long way. And so sometimes when motivation is tough because school gets tough, reminding yourself of how far you've come and how much you've accomplished already, um, is a good way to celebrate those little wins along the way and stay focused, on the goals ahead. What is the one thing I can do right now to help me move towards my goals? All right, next slide. All right, so let's plan for success. So we've outlined sort of 8 different strategies. Some, often think of this as these are tools in your tool bag. You're not going to use all of them all at once, but maybe there's a strategy in there that you thought might have some potential for you. Um, is there a strategy that you think that you might want to try to introduce into your practice? And how can you apply it? How can it be helpful to you right now? And finally, who on campus is available to assist you? So Bill and Emma and I, we come from 3 different departments on our campus. Who are some of the student affairs professionals on your campus that might be helpful to you, that maybe you want to introduce yourself to? So with those 3 things in mind, you can create your own success strategy and your own next steps, for hopefully reducing procrastination, seeing progress, really focusing on the process that you're undertaking as you are learning at university or college. And while we have our eyes set on the goal ahead, really it's the journey that is going to get you there. And that would be the plan for success. Next slide. All right, we've included some resources here, particular to students with ADHD. I've also included a handout in the resources for this particular session, that are posted somewhere on the platform for today's events. And so that's something that you can take a look at afterwards if you're interested. I would love to turn it out to the group now to ask if there are any questions or any last words from Emma and Bill. What did we forget to say that we wanted to say? Are there other things to add?
On the subject of resources, my favorite book on practical solutions for ADHD is ADD Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life by Judith Kohlberg and who's her co-writer? Judith Kohlberg's an ADD clinician, and she writes it in conjunction with a professional organizer. So it's not just, it's practical things that actually work. There's a whole chapter on using lists more. There's a whole chapter on the buddy system and how you can have more fruitful relationships, more symbiotic relationships by understanding your ADHD and being able to explain how it affects you, and things that you can help someone who doesn't have ADD with, and things that they can help you with to make life better for both of you. I think it's a really useful book, and it does deal with procrastination in a chapter or two. Very useful book.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. I'm going to add that to our resource list. Thank you. Okay. You want to move to our last slide? And we just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I'm not seeing any questions come up in the chat, or if anyone wanted to come off mute, you're welcome to do so. Not seeing anyone jumping at that. I just wanted to say thank you very much to everyone for coming today. Appreciate you taking time. And thank you to my co-presenters, Emma and Bill. And feel free to reach out anytime. We are happy to chat with anyone who's interested in this topic further. Have a lovely day, everyone.